Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. Do you remember a period about 4 or 5 years ago when India was very much the flavor of the world? This was the next economic superpower to be, and perhaps it could still work out that way. But for the moment, there seems to be a lot of skepticism around the world on India, on the Indian growth story, and certainly on the intentions of the present UPA government. And all of that has got much worse after the recent budget, where certain retrospective laws were passed, or amendments were made, or clarifications were issued that have really led to quite a global stir. So we're here today to say what is happening to the Indian story, and is it being murdered in its sleep, perhaps is the way to put it. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome on the Big Fight studio Lord Swaraj Paul. It's great to have you here with us in India. Dr. Surjit Bhalla, who was actually on a program with me when we actually discovered some of these clarifications, Surjit is the right way to call them, and we broadcast them to the world at that point, so you can be here to discuss what the implications are. Rajan Matthews, Director General of the Cellular Operators Association of India, doesn't completely agree with some of the contentions that I was making, and we'll see why he doesn't completely agree with that. Nick Gowing, main presenter, BBC World News. Nick, it's great to have you with us. Suresh Setna joining us, partner Dat Menon Danmaksad joining us from Mumbai, and Mohandas Pai as well joining us from Bangalore. It's great to have all of you with us. Well, let's just get in Manish Tiwari of the Congress Party. Now, Manish, we've sympathized for a long while with some of the challenges that the government had, coalition partners, you couldn't get reforms through, parliamentary majorities. All that's fine, but now many people are thinking that the government's almost determined to commit suicide, or if not commit suicide itself, at least murder the Indian economy. Why come up with retrospective laws of this nature, which have really created a global stir?
Retrospective legislation is certainly not desirable, but it is not something which has not been done in the past. So if the finance minister, in his wisdom, has decided to retrospectively amend a particular section of the Income Tax Act, he's not done something which is completely unprecedented and which would settle or which would unsettle the entire taxation regime. If you look at things in a perspective from 1961 till 2012, when the Income Tax Act commenced, and till today, I think this is something which every finance minister has done year on year. It is not something which is unexceptional. And having said that, I think there's a settled principle of law, which unfortunately no amount of angst can unsettle, that there is no equity to tax.
I think, Manish, the point that needs to be noted is no one is saying that the changes you are wanting to bring about are bad by themselves. The real question is you made them retrospective, and that means that people can't have faith that they go to a court in India and somehow at the end of the day they can win all the way up to the Supreme Court, and then the government can come in and change the goalposts.
Just because certain corporate interests are getting hurt, just that does not mean that we should become their forerunners and try and run a campaign in the media as if the government has done something, which is unique, which is exceptional, and which has been done for the first time. I would have pointed out repeated and numerous instances where successive finance ministers have legislated to amend the Income Tax Act retrospectively. But having said that, I would like to caveat it by saying that as a lawyer, it is my considered opinion, and this is my personal opinion, that retrospective legislation is something which is highly undesirable. Any legislation which should be done with prospective effect. That sends out a signal that the government may be trying to plug the loopholes, may be trying to ensure that the taxation regime is most equitable in terms of revenue collection from the government standpoint, and it does not essentially or necessarily want to transgress into areas which fall within the ambit of judicial determination. But notwithstanding this personal opinion, if I was to look at it from a very objective perspective, I don't think you can really fault the finance minister for following a tradition, which has been not only set by his predecessors, but which is something which is done on a regular basis by finance ministers around the world.
Manish, you are essentially saying that this is all absolutely fine and investor confidence is not going to be shaken at all?
Well, I think a little too much is being made out of this whole business of retrospective legislation. As I earlier pointed out, it does hurt certain corporate interests, but that does not mean that we should become the forerunners of those corporate interests and carry out an unending campaign in the media, thinking that it will create pressure on the government and then the government would be forced to resile from the position which it has taken in the budget.
Manish, is there any chance at all that the government could do a rethink? Because frankly, this is not the best of times globally. There is a sense that investments could start to dry up. Is there a possibility that the government could rethink on some of these provisions?
That's precisely the paranoia that I was talking about. There is a systematic campaign which is being conducted by corporate interests saying that if retrospective legislation is not withdrawn, it is going to hurt the investment climate and investments into India will dry up. This is a complete hoax. It is a myth. As I earlier pointed out, that people do not only make taxation as the basis of taking investment decisions. And I don't think that it is going to impact the investment inflows into India as the paranoia is being sought to be created so that the interests of certain corporates can get served, if this decision was to be reversed by the government.
Do you have the NDTV Profit app? All the markets, all the news in your own homemade, ready-made portfolio available there for you.
We will right now answer what you should sell, what you should buy when markets are down.
Download it ndtvprofit.com/apps. Get the best app from the channel you trust.